Hello, everybody. How are we feeling this morning? Are we okay? Who had a good time last night? It was pretty good. It was fun. Anyone go to Schumann's bar? That was fun. So, my name is Mike Butcher. So, what did you say, Esther?
They're still there.
There's a few people still at Schumann's bar, I think. But most of you are here. My name is Mike Butcher. I'm the editor of TechCrunch Europe. I work with Mike Harrington in the Valley, Eric Schoenfeld in New York. I'm part of the TechCrunch network. And here we are. This is just my stuff here. And I just wanted to give you a little sort of unpacking about what we're going to be talking about. This is our wonderful panel. And what is going on in Europe? You know, let's talk about European startups and the acceleration that's going on. I think that what's going on is, here we have our panel. We have Stefan Glänzer, Lars Hinrichs, Hack Forward, Jean-Paul Schmetz, Reshma Sohoni, and myself. And we're all involved in European startups, so I'm writing about them. I guess also my little insertion here is that I'm also an advisor to a co-working space in London called Tech Hub. I'll tell you about that in a second. Let's just talk about this. So Seedcamp, Reshma. Here's Reshma. Seedcamp started in 2007. This is the typical Seedcamp scenario, all packed in. It's just over there. Packed in, talking about startups in this crammed-in lecture theatre in London. Seedcamp Week happens every year annually. But these guys are mavens. They have been going around Europe, expanding out into other countries as well, hoovering up startups and talking about how to accelerate these companies. It's launched in 2007, I said. It's VC and angel backed, a network of 500 plus mentors, multiple mini events. This is the level of investment that they have, and they have lots of intensive mentoring, but there's lots more to say about Seedcamp. This is just to give you the skinny, as it were. Next up, mentors are extremely important to Seedcamp. As you can see, Saul Klein there, Michael Arrington, Jeff Clavier, Chris Sacca, all huge people in the industry. And this intensive mentoring really does sort of propel these startups into an acceleration. Then we've got the new guys on the block, Lars Hinrichs. Many of them are aware of him. Lars was the founder of Zing. And these guys have come along, and they are very product-oriented, very product-based, about programmers. You can see it in the name, Hack Forward. So this is a little bit of a skinny on them. This is what their funding level is. This is how much they take. This is all public information that we've reported on TechCrunch. And we're going to also talk about what they do. They do talk quarterly unconferences as well. It's a very interesting model. And they have also mentors, of course, and lots of meetups. Next up, White Bear Yard, Stefan Glänzer, formerly of Last FM, principally angel-backed, very large physical space. Not so much a formal program, but we're going to ask him a little bit more about that. But also closer to an informal kind of incubator, but in a new style. And this is their space here in White Bear Yard in London. It's about, what is it, about 5,000 square feet, something like that?
Closer to 10.
It's about 10,000 square feet, yeah. But it's not in the incubator model, but it's more like a kind of bringing people in and mentoring them. And then there's Tech Hub, and Tech Hub is part of the movement that's going around Europe right now of co-working spaces. Now, these aren't accelerators or incubators in the traditional model, but they are co-working spaces, very much in the Valley model. I mean, for instance, we've got over here Elena from Digital October in Russia, in Moscow. Very, very similar. We're sort of partners in crime. So this is more about space. It's more about serendipity. Because one of the things that we lack here in Europe is being able to bump into each other. You know, in the Valley, you can go down the 101 highway and meet people. You can go to the House of Blues bar. You can just bump into people. So serendipity is very important to something like Tech Hub. This is a little bit of background about it. I'm a strategic advisor. I'll declare my interest. It's not an incubator model. It's not an investor. It's more like a platform for other investors to come into. And that's in London. So it's really sort of solving the London problem, because London is expensive, and it's based on this place called Silicon Roundabout that we jokingly call. It's kind of fun. And there's the founder, Elizabeth Farley. This is Jimmy Wales there, and he does all of these, events and people turning up. Eric Ries there. And there are lots of others in Europe. Le Camping just started, Springboard, Launch 48, Startup Bootcamp in Denmark. All of these guys are getting together, doing new things. There's a real feeling of something happening here. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say, guys. So now, let's turn to our panel. Let me ask you first off. Everybody is aware of what happened during the boom, the dot-com boom, and there was this thing called an incubator. Now, what is the difference between the incubator model, where you sort of gave a startup a desk and a PR company and servers and, accountants and all the things, and what's happening now? Does anyone want to go for that?
Okay. Well, I think the biggest difference is that the world has changed. I think that we were talking in a time where internet was slow, where infrastructure was expensive, etc. And one of the purpose of the incubator was to share cost of infrastructure. So you would basically have to spend a massive amount of money on server racks and software licenses and salespeople and infrastructure in offices. And frankly, 90%, I think we can all agree, has disappeared in the last 10 years. And now you do have an infrastructure. You do have app stores. You do have ad sales organization of many, many kinds. You do have SDKs that actually work. You have open source. And so we are not so different, but the world is definitely different.
And would you guys agree?
Yeah, and I mean, you have a is this on? Yeah. You have a greater volume of people wanting to start up as well. So I think you have the accelerators today are focusing on what are the key elements of value that they can really help this large mass of startups to really get themselves off the ground. So in that sense, that need hasn't changed. It's a much greater volume you have to actually support.
And Lars, when you started Zing, that must have been back in the day. I mean, what would have been different about how you would have done it if you'd had access to these kinds of networks and this kind of acceleration?
In 2003, it was really the dark ages. You were not really looking for someone else. With Hack Forward now, we are only looking on geeks. And I would say that this is one of the major differences. I'm a business guy, I'm not a coder. But now, with Hack Forward, we are giving those kind of talented young guys an opportunity to accelerate in a very fast way to create their own companies. Actually, our mission at Hack Forward is we're freeing the Europeans' best software developers from their day jobs and really want to help them to create their own game-changing companies. Europe is not really a place where VCs invest in tech where there is no market. We invest in tech and we hope that there is no market because then we can create something.
So let's talk about the financial model. So, Stefan, White Bear Yard, it's yourself and a network of angels, principally. You obviously co-invest with VCs as well. What is the financial model here? What's an incentive to a founder to give away, quite a large slice of their company, sort of, to these accelerators, or is it more flexible than that? Do you think that there's an actual viable model here?
So our model is pretty easy. It's money for nothing and chicks for free. That's how we approach the entrepreneurs, and they all listen to it. No, I think I've been an entrepreneur myself for so many years, and I rather align my interests alongside of the entrepreneurs. So that means if we invest, we rarely take more than 20 to 30%, and we'll keep in mind that the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurial team keeps the majority even after Series A, potentially after Series B, because I think the real value created gets if you have a strong entrepreneur. If you look to the learnings from the US is that all the real successful companies like Amazon, Apple, Google, and so on, they are all still founder-driven. Even eBay messed it up. How can you mess up such a beautiful business model like eBay? It's unbelievable because you replace the founder with some managers, I think it's actually not working. So what we are after in White Bear Yard is supporting, accelerating the European entrepreneurs and actually aim for creating a truly European company. So taking all the strengths, taking designers from Italy, France, taking coders from the Eastern Europe, taking actually business guys from the UK. They are just better. You know, if you go to a butcher, sorry Mike, but if you go to a butcher and ask, and you want to buy some stuff and you see a sign, the chicken was so good it sold out. It's just radically different to the continental European approach. So that's why we love to have business developed guys from the UK. We love operators from Germany, and finally the CEOs from Scandinavia, to sum it up.
I mean, to answer your question, you know, one of the biggest education tasks we had about 3.5 years ago when we started was really trying to teach the entrepreneurs, sort of in Europe particularly, that, you know, having a smaller piece of a bigger pie is much more important than, you know, having 99% of a business that takes forever to get anywhere. And so over 3 years, what the entrepreneurs going through Seedcamp have told us, they can sort of accomplish in 3 to 6 months what used to take them 18 months to do. And you know, if you get that equation right, then it's sort of worth it, in our view at least, that you're giving away 5 to 10% of your business and you're getting 50,000 euros plus that speed to market and access to market.
Lars, do you think that this sort of model appeals more to entrepreneurs who are trying to move companies quickly, or to hackers, coders, developers, programmers?
For us, it's really for the long term. We believe in technology. When we interviewed, or when I started Hack Forward, we interviewed like hundreds of people, especially coders, and many people actually said that they're afraid of speaking with venture capitalists, and they don't know how the game is. Most of the answers was, I'm fearing that I'm ripped off. So this is why we took a completely different approach to the entire thing. We make everything public, the entire contract is there. We say, we give you answers within 72 hours, if it's a yes or a no. You know the valuation, you know everything up front. We take 27%, and my big wish is that out of the 7 companies we founded now in the last 8 months, that many actually don't need another round of funding. This is a new paradigm shift, that you need only the brains, the best guys. The infrastructure is there and is very cost efficient. So we hope that we have a couple of companies with like 2, 3, 4, 5 people, but with the power of the social networks of today, you can actually reach millions of customers with a very, very small team.
There's a kind of, but you know, is there a sort of a band model here? Kind of, you're getting a band, Jean, is there kind of getting a band together as opposed to, you know, building the next U2?
In a sense, because what I think the whole world is underestimating greatly at the moment is what happens when you have very strong infrastructures, when you have Google, Facebook, Twitter, Apple Store. These are massive infrastructures, and what happened there is that you can actually have things that are successful and profitable that are not necessarily businesses in the traditional sense. So I think there will be something like bands, like pop stars, that, you know, we are the producers, so, you know, we test them if they can play the guitar and if they can sing, and then we're going to help them to fine-tune their style and stuff like this, and then go maybe for an Angry Bird style, you know, pop that lasts for 2 years and then goes down gracefully. It does not necessarily have to translate into a financing round A, B, C, D, IPO. I think that's a very restrictive way of thinking about what we are doing now, because the infrastructure is so strong that you can play a number of things over that infrastructure.
And it's actually not only infrastructure. So if I look around in what happens in Berlin Mitte over the last 18 months, I mean, it's astonishing. Yeah, you have probably on 150 to 200 meters, you probably have 2,000 to 3,000 employees all working for startups. It's just awesome. So it's a big density, and the whole exchange between Berlin, London, and partly New York is accelerating. And keep in mind, I think the latest digital innovation has become out of Chicago with the Groupon guys. And our friends, the Samba brothers, they actually accelerated this model into the world. So they are now probably responsible, we should ask them later on stage, for 50% of the global Groupon business. We ourselves, together with Michael Brame, started Rebate Networks and Daily Deal. This is a company, we launched this 12 months ago. We are on a run rate of $250 million on a global scale. We employ 2,500 people. I mean, this is just unheard of. Everything happened out of Germany.
But let's talk about that clustering effect, because part of the supposed advantage of these accelerators is getting to hang out with other developers, other startups in the same space physically. I mean, Reshma, you guys do it in a in the sense of literally doing lots and lots of events around Europe, and you've expanded into other parts of the world as well. And then you get together at Seedcamp Week and sort of hothouse everybody. Do you, I mean, for instance, these guys, White Bay Yard, for instance, at Tech Hub, for instance, we also have physical spaces. Seedcamp doesn't have a physical space. Do you see that as an advantage or a disadvantage? I mean, what's the kind of physicality aspect to it?
I mean, we encourage our companies to try to co-locate as much as possible. So they are trying to do that. But early on, we made the decision not to. That wasn't our business model and expertise to be in the real estate space. So we decided not to go down that route. But what we do is we do encourage them, because basically you can apply to Seedcamp pretty much 11 months out of the year. It just, if you can afford a ticket to Berlin, Paris, New York in June, you're welcome to apply. So this idea of constantly bumping into each other and bumping into mentors, many of whom are in this room, that's what we're trying to foster. And we take our companies on a 2-week roadshow to the US as well. So it's not just limited to Europe, and we're trying to play together with everybody. So rather than having that space, we've sort of, it happens pretty much monthly that you can really be bumping into each other.
And Lars, what about Hack Forward?
We are once again a bit different. Since there are geeks, everything is virtual anyway. But 4 times a year we actually meet in a place in Mallorca. So the Americans have this kind of geeks in a plane thing. We have geeks in the sun. And we meet for 4 times a year, 4 days in Mallorca, and have really extensive co-working and some kind of actually bonding, where we have our referrers, we have our board members, and we have all the startups. And geeks actually really like to help other geeks. So since we have less, we don't finance any MBA guys, we only finance geeks, they really love it to hang out with other geeks.
And so I'm going to ask you guys to start thinking about some questions as well. So we'll do some Q&A as well, if that's okay with everybody. So we can talk about, and also if you want to talk about your own ecosystem. But let's just go through the panel. I mean, name me, a lot of these people aren't aware of the companies that you guys are working with. So if you could have some examples, starting with you, Stefan. Who are the companies that you're working with at White Bay Yard?
So at White Bay Yard, probably let's start with Mendeley, which aims to be the social knowledge graph of the academic research. It's a fascinating company. Actually, 3 Germans moved to London. We have collected in the past 18 months the world's biggest database of academic research, with now 61 million unique documents. Keep in mind, it took Thomson Reuters 49 years to come up to 40 million documents. So the whole crowdsourcing effect of Mendeley is actually working. This is a company where the biggest market share is in the US, in this basic global leader, so I think quite an achievement. Another good example is probably Flatter, so very prominent. I'm a big fan of Flatter, as you can all see here with my t-shirt. Flatter is actually started by Peter Sunde, who was so in the Alexa Global Top 100, there are 2 European companies, just to make sure we are working on this. There are only 2 European companies. One is BBC, I wouldn't call this a startup. And the other one is the famous Pirate Bay, where Peter Sunde is the founder of. So what he did with Pirate Bay was sharing information of entertaining content. What he does with Flatter is sharing information of money. So it's a like button with a wallet.
Okay, Lars, give us some examples.
The first company we launched is actually a company called The Deadline, which is an amazing HTML5 to-do manager with some kind of artificial intelligence built in, and you can collaborate with anybody who has got an email address. We have another company called Love Buy, where you can actually turn every single link on a web page into a product link, affiliate link on the fly. You just insert like four lines of JavaScript code, and you immediately have a new revenue stream. We have 2 games. We have, maybe for the geographics, we have one company out of UK, one in Austria, a few in Germany right now, the first one opening in Paris. So we really want to take this kind of European play.
We've been around 3.5 years. We have 33 companies across 17 different countries that we've invested in, and just a few of the examples. I mean, we invest in pretty much everything, gaming, video monetization, B2B, kind of various different sectors. So one of the companies is Zamanta, which people may know about. They're headquartered in New York, actually, came out of a little country, Slovenia, in Europe, and they help authors create better or write better content on the web, and they help publishers. They enable them to help that content be discovered, so some of the content they're writing about. So that's one company. It's very much global. There's another company that came out of Estonia in the B2B space, Erply, and they're in the ERP space. So that's another one. Garms, which is an Austrian company. I think they're around here today somewhere, but they're really disrupting the whole sort of fashion process from design to delivery. So they're a really interesting company to watch, and a lot of different companies. We have 4 companies that are already generating +1 million plus in revenue after just about a year being off the ground. So they're accelerating much faster.
And what sort of companies are you working with?
Well, basically, same as Lars, we're at Hack Forward. So if I may backtrack to the last question about US, the big elephant in the room, US versus Europe. It's really not US versus Europe. It's really Silicon Valley against the rest of the world. Because Silicon Valley has this combination that took many, many decades to build, of universities and proximity, and everything is working together. And it's the first time, I guess, where we can break that or reconstruct that in virtual ways in Europe and have all the people interested in the most difficult graph theory effect in Europe meet together virtually. And also, 65%, I believe, of all postgrad in computer science in the US are actually coming from outside the US. And geeks don't like to move. So we have to find a way to find them alternatives to remain in Estonia, in Romania, and wherever they are. And exercise their passion rather than have to move to Silicon Valley to do graph theory at the highest level.
Okay, I'm just going to give you guys some opportunity for questions or points. If you want to raise your hand, I'll come to you, or we can get a mic to you. Can you say who you are and where you're from before you ask a question? Thank you. Thank you. That's a very interesting question, because I think one of the things about the ecosystem in Silicon Valley is you have the Apples, the Facebooks, the Googles, the big companies that can potentially be exit opportunities for these smaller startups coming out of accelerators. I mean, what's the opportunity here? I mean, in Europe, what have we got? Nokia to exit to, or Vodafone or something? I don't know. Let's maybe move on. But what do you guys think about? Do you guys work with big corporations? Do you talk to them a lot?
Yeah, I mean, we do quite a lot, actually. So because of the way the mentoring works in these 11 different locations, corporates are a big part of the mentor group. So out of the 80, you'll have 10 or so that we've close partnerships with. Google's a really big sponsor of ours. We're close to Facebook as well, Microsoft, IBM, so on and so forth. But besides that, sort of on the media side as well, BBC, particularly in the UK, BBC, Channel 4, etc., News International. And I'm actually, more and more corporates are reaching out because they've gotten to know us over the past few years. And so they're whether it's internally, they're trying to develop, an innovation house or a fund or whatever it is, or just trying to get, we do a half a day when we go to the West Coast or New York. We do half a day with different companies out there. And, just been talking to News about trying to do something at their offices as well. So we're definitely trying to, help bridge that gap. And having this portfolio of 30-odd companies, different ones are relevant to different corporates at different times. So, that really helps us engage with these guys quite a lot.
And Lars, do you think that big corporations can actually understand these, product-led startups?
We don't care so much about the big companies. Actually, we want to offer maybe the best developers in these big companies an alternative career move to get out.
You're doing it in reverse. You're sucking the talent out.
So, and since the small companies we are investing in, they're more like some kind of disruptive. So they really don't want to work with the big guys. Together. They live in this kind of Web 2.0, Facebook, Google, etc. world, where marketing is data-driven and not some kind of creative stuff. So we're really looking on talent or coding talent only and help them to find an alternative way to classical corporate life, or being hired for cheap money by some MBAs who can convince European VCs.
Controversial words there, Lars. What about, actually for our part, the guys I work with at Tech Hub, they're very much about getting a company like Pearson, who obviously published the Financial Times, to come out and hang out with the startups, much more about events and sponsorship. But let's talk about, go on.
I would love to, what we really need to achieve here in Europe is creating a global Google, Apple, Amazon, whatever out of Europe. That's what's needed for many reasons. I couldn't care less about the whole exit stuff. If you create a great company, this will be worth something. Maybe you're lucky and you get some irrational IPO values and so on. That's all on the windfall profit side. But what we really need is creating our own strong tech companies, either out of the startups, out of 2-3 geeks, because in the end it doesn't take much more than this, or some of the bigger companies do actually a pretty good job looking here what Boda has achieved with the DLD community, looking what's happening with Axel Springer in Berlin. They did some smart acquisitions. But that's what we need, because we need to educate. And that's what I see in Berlin Mitte as of now, a couple of thousand new guys working in the digital space. I'm quite bullish for the next 3 to 5 years, actually.
Let's do some numbers here. Yeah. We have 45,000 computer graduates each year in Europe. I would bet that if you take on maths, physics and others, and all the people who taught themselves computer programming, we come to a number around 90,000 people in Europe every single day or every single year who can actually code. And I bet that they're not worse than the guys in Silicon Valley.
Good point.
One second. We have 400,000 new engineers coming out of China every year, just in comparison.
It's a good comparison. Esther, could we get a microphone over? Oh, we've got a microphone here, and then here, and then here. But can you? Okay, you go first, and we'll move.
This is Mark McLeod, a partner at Real Ventures, which is Canada's largest seed fund. And my question is, because you came to standalone accelerators who don't really have capital to do follow-on rounds, do you encourage your companies to go through the VC ecosystem and raise dollars, or are you pushing them towards kind of early exit, quick to break even?
Yeah, what about the follow-on? Reshma, what about the follow-on side of things?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Lars is an investor in Seedcamp, and we feed into Whiteberry Yard, for example, right? So we're really being a part of this ecosystem, and we actually are funded by VCs and individual investors. So we have 20-odd investors. I see Nanad from DN Capital over there, and so bunch of the different VCs across Europe, Atlas Ventures, which is now in the U.S., Eden, Index, et cetera, et cetera. So we're absolutely, playing part of that ecosystem. And I mean, I think we were talking about this before in the session, is we are really driving these businesses to be big and to be ambitious. And one of the challenges we've been talking about is, okay, now you have accelerators, that's great, but what about helping these companies build 10 million, 50 million, 100 million revenue businesses? That's the next hard part, at least for our businesses. So we're very focused on that. But I think the reality is you're going to have a mixture, right? So you're going to have some smaller businesses, and for them, one of the things you see so well in the Valley is they can exit once or twice, and they continue to build bigger and bigger companies. So I think that is the reality for some of the businesses, but our ambitions are big, to build big businesses.
Okay, question.
Esther Dyson, this is yet another take on that same question. The issue isn't so much the follow-on funding, but the follow-on people. This comes especially from my experience in Russia, but it's easy, incredibly easy to start up a company. But how do you get to 100, 300 people where you need middle managers? If you have this gulf between the large companies and the small companies, you can't get project managers, financial people, all the non-coders. And second, many companies go through what is now called pivots, where they have to lay people off, and that's extremely difficult. Laying people off is extremely difficult in Europe. So what happens to the Mittelstand of all these cute little startups?
Lars, I mean, this is one of the things that I think is interesting about Hack Forward. You're quite virtual community, aren't you? Quite spread out. You come together 4 times a year. That's cool. But yeah, how are we going to get to these bigger startups? Are we still in the kind of Cretaceous period of Europe, as it were, of the European ecosystem?
For Hack Forward, it's a 1-year program, and we're month 9. We have 3 outcomes. We have the learning experience, which will be quite a few. We have hopefully many companies who are actually cash flow positive and just grow. And we have the last opportunity, which is a star. And the more companies you actually fund, the more likely is it that you hit a star. And we have interest from all venture capitalists who are wanting to work together because they see we're focusing on talent. On this particular point, we also have one guy coming from Google. He recruited more than 4,000 people, and he's actually doing a lecture with all the startups in our events, like how to find the right people, how to make the great people decisions. So it is not just money we give. We also have a marketing guy, a talent guy, finance guy, to help and bring the other side of the equation, this kind of more business side, to the startups. Yeah.
I'm just going to squeeze a question there because we're going to close to time now. Come on in.
All right, quickly. David Blumberg, Blumberg Capital.
Can you hold the mic like this, please, like a rock star?
David Blumberg, Blumberg Capital, San Francisco. I'm just concerned about the rhetoric of Silicon Valley versus Europe. We're all here as Americans and Israelis and Chinese because we love Europe. We want to be here. We want to cooperate. It's a partnership time. That's the whole goal. Almost all the startups we're seeing that we fund are inherently, from the beginning, multinational. So I'd urge you to cooperate with us. Let's not divide, but let's unite.
No. That's not the point at all. What are you talking about? Cooperation? Good grief. Who let this guy in? Pascal? Can you security?
No, actually, on that point,
the chicken is so good it's sold out.
Actually, on that point, we're seeing a lot of interest from U.S. companies and investors into Seedcamp companies, and it's a market change from 3.5, 4 years ago when we used to go out to the U.S. on our road show. It was sort of oh, that's nice, they're over here again, and versus 3 years later, it's like, okay, we actually want to, we really want to invest in these companies, and we want to help them grow, and we're actively looking at European businesses. So I completely agree with you.
Many of the European entrepreneurs think about their own market, like Germany being great. There are 100 million German-speaking people. Let's focus on the German market. If I speak with American entrepreneurs, they immediately see the opportunity of being worldwide from the start. They think 2 billion people, easy models, and Europeans are much more in this kind of feature problem. What kind of next feature we do for our small markets. We at Hack Forward, we try to educate to immediately think about the worldwide market. So all companies we start, they immediately start multilingual.
Stefan, you want to say something?
No.
Okay. So what you see here, ladies and gentlemen, is not really the start because it's already started, but the continuation of a real interesting time in Europe now. We have real leaders, people, entrepreneurs who've exited their companies, who are putting back into the ecosystem, creating new accelerator programs for other startups, for other entrepreneurs, and feeding back in again. And so let me ask you this, and to conclude our panel, what are you doing? If you own a car that's over 20,000 euros, if you are building an extension onto your house, are you buying a second home in the sun somewhere? What are you doing? Do you really need that other car, right? Why aren't you putting back into the ecosystem? Why are you not backing these accelerators, getting involved in the startup system? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to you, and thank you very much to our panel.
Thank you.